It's 2 a.m. at the Hotel Monte Vista. You're in room 210. 3 sharp knocks echo down your door. And a voice calls out, "Room service." But you didn't order anything. You open the door, and the hallway's empty. 10 minutes later, 3 more knocks. "Room service." You check the peephole. Nothing. But you open the door anyway, and the hallway is still empty. This isn't just any old ghost story from the internet. This happened to one of the most famous men in Hollywood history, John Wayne, and people say that it's still happening. So the question isn't whether the Hotel Monte Vista is haunted. The question is, if you visit, which ghost will visit your room that night? Welcome back, my kindred spirits. I'm May, and this is the Dark Folio, where we uncover the shadows behind the stories, the truths buried in legend, and the places where the past refuses to stay quiet. Tonight, we're checking into a place where the front desk may give you a room key, but it's the past that decides whether you'll be sleeping alone. In the heart of Flagstaff, Arizona, along old Route 66, stands a brick building with neon dreams and restless nights. A place where Hollywood legends brush shoulders with outlaws, where radio pioneers broadcast into the night, where tunnel systems beneath the streets held secrets darker than any ghost story. This is the Hotel Monte Vista, and before this night is over, you'll understand why some guests check in, but they never truly leave. Before it was a hotel, Flagstaff was a railroad town, loud, transient, and always moving. In the early 1920s, the lumber industry and the Santa Fe Railway were booming. Workers poured in, travelers passed through. Money came fast and often left just as quickly. Local citizens raised funds to help build a grand hotel, hoping to turn Flagstaff into a destination rather than just a stopover. This wasn't just any fundraising campaign. In April of 1926, prominent citizens and the novelist Zane Grey himself donated funds, raising approximately $200,000 in just 1 month. That's over $3.6 million in today's money. So you do the math on that. 1 month, $3.6 million. They really wanted that hotel. For those unfamiliar, Zane Grey wrote Riders of the Purple Sage, one of the best-selling Western novels of all time. And if you're not familiar with the Western genre, well, let me give you some examples here. He was the Stephen King of his era, with over 80 books and 112 film adaptations to his name. When Grey donated to help build the Monte Vista, it wasn't just money. It was a stamp of approval from one of America's most beloved authors. Ground was broken on June 8th, and on January 1st, 1927, the hotel opened as the Community Hotel. And as a cool side note, the name Monte Vista, meaning Mountain View, well, it was actually chosen by a 12-year-old girl in a contest. Isn't that cool? And here's what makes this hotel truly unique. It was the longest publicly held commercial property in Arizona history. It was built entirely by citizens for citizens, a community hotel in every sense. And it wouldn't be sold to a private owner until the early 1960s. This was 1927, and the hotel was very modern for its time. 73 rooms spread out across 3 floors, hot and cold running water, telephones, and steam heat. But it also attracted exactly the kind of lives that leave impressions behind. There were railroad workers, long-term drifters, performers, Prohibition-era drinkers, and yes, along with that came tragedy. When a building hosts thousands of temporary lives, not all of them leave quietly. But before we talk about what lingers in the shadows, we need to understand just how vibrant and how dark this hotel's history truly was. So before we talk about the dark history of the hotel, I'd like to briefly touch on something I found so very interesting. During my lifetime, I've worked several years in radio, and it is such a passion of mine. And once you get it in your system, you never quite get it out, which is one of the reasons why I do the podcast now, so I can still kind of get that feel for the radio bug. But in 1929, something remarkable happened at the Monte Vista. Mary Costigan, the first American woman to be granted a radio broadcasting license for her own station, she moved her station, KFXY, into the hotel. And Mary broadcast from the Monte Vista for 3 hours a day with a 100-watt signal, and over 400 residents attended her maiden broadcast from the hotel. I just find that so cool, and thanks, Mary, for being able to let women like me do what we love today. Her voice echoed through all those halls when radio was magic and was getting started and was rocking and rolling. So, speaking of voices echoing through the halls, well, let's talk about what happened during Prohibition. Like many establishments of the era, the Monte Vista housed a hidden speakeasy. In 1931, it was raided. But that wasn't the only secret hiding beneath the streets. A system of underground tunnels connects the hotel to other downtown buildings. Local legend says that Chinese immigrants built these tunnels after being unjustly blamed for a devastating fire in 1886, allowing them to move around without facing harassment from townspeople. While Chinese workers did face real persecution during this era, historians note that the tunnels were more likely built to carry steam heat and utilities between buildings. What is documented is that the tunnels later housed opium dens, moonshine distilleries, and gambling operations during Prohibition. The darkness beneath the hotel became its own world. And when you build a world in darkness, well, sometimes that darkness comes home with you. By the 1940s and the 50s, the Monte Vista had transformed into something glamorous. Western films were exploding in popularity, and over 100 movies were filmed near Sedona and Oak Creek Canyon. The hotel became a Hollywood haven. John Wayne, Bing Crosby, Gary Cooper, Spencer Tracy, Humphrey Bogart, Jane Russell, Carole Lombard, even Freddie Mercury and Michael Stipe stayed there decades later. A scene from Casablanca was filmed inside the hotel, and the neon sign that still glows above the entrance, in the 1930s, it served as Flagstaff's emergency signal system, flashing to alert authorities and citizens of hazards and catastrophes. This wasn't just a hotel. It was a beacon, a gathering place, a stage. In some ways, it still is. The Hotel Monte Vista sits at a crossroads, literally and emotionally. It's a railroad town where arrivals and departures happen daily. It's on that fabulous, historic Route 66. It's a stop filled with transient energy. It was also a Prohibition-era hub where secrets were currency, and a building that's never really closed its doors. Constant movement, emotional highs and lows, sudden deaths, isolation, violence hidden beneath glamour. These are the ingredients often cited in hauntings, and the Hotel Monte Vista has them all. So let's talk about the guests who never checked out. One of the most famous stories centers on room 305. According to guest reports and staff accounts, visitors have woken in the middle of the night to see a woman sitting in a rocking chair by the window. She doesn't speak, she doesn't move toward them, she simply rocks and watches. When guests scream or turn on the lights, witnesses say she vanishes, but the chair is sometimes still moving. Housekeeping staff report that even if they move the chair away from the window, it reappears there the next day, always facing the window, always waiting. No confirmed record exists of her identity, but local legends suggest she may have been a long-term resident from the hotel's early years. According to the stories passed down, an elderly woman who rented the room would sit by that window for hours on end, staring down at Babbitt's General Store on San Francisco Street. No one knows what she was looking at or looking for. A woman who never checked out because this was the only home she ever had. Or perhaps because someone she was waiting for never came back. Room 305 has been featured on multiple paranormal investigation shows and is considered by many to be the most active room in the hotel. In room 220, guests report something far more aggressive. This entity, nicknamed the Meat Man in hotel lore, is said to appear as a heavy-set man sometimes sitting on the edge of the bed. Guests describe the feeling of being unable to move, as if pressure is pinning them down. Some report the smell of decay. Others wake with bruises. The nickname comes from a documented incident. In the early 1980s, this room was home to a long-term boarder with a very strange, disgusting habit. He would hang raw meat from the chandelier. Why? No one knows. But 3 days after his death, his body was discovered in that room. Not long after, according to hotel staff, a maintenance worker made repairs to room 220. He turned off the lights, locked the door, and left. 5 minutes later, he returned. The light was back on, the bed linens were stripped, and the television was blasting at full volume. To this day, guests in room 220 report hearing coughing and strange noises from the otherwise empty room. This is a man or a presence that still claims space, and perhaps a man who's still tending to his strange rituals. Now let's talk about room 210 and the ghost that even John Wayne couldn't ignore. In the late 1950s, the legendary actor was staying in the Monte Vista while filming in the area. One night, he reported hearing a knock at his door and a voice announcing room service. When he opened the door, no one was there. This happened repeatedly during his stay. Wayne described the spirit as friendly, even benevolent, but persistent. Today, this entity is known as the Phantom Bellboy, and he's still making his rounds. Guests throughout the hotel report hearing knocks on their doors, phantom phone calls to their rooms, and the distinct sound of footsteps in the empty hallways. Some guests have even reported seeing a young man in vintage bellhop uniform standing in the corridor before he vanishes. Was there ever a real bellboy who died at the hotel? Well, records are unclear, but John Wayne's account, one of the first documented paranormal experiences at the Monte Vista, suggests something has been walking these halls for at least 70 years. And unlike the meat man, this presence seems to still be working, still serving, and still knocking. Before we venture deeper into the darkness, if you're enjoying this journey into the Hotel Monte Vista, I'd love it if you could take a moment to rate and review the Dark Folio on whatever platform you're listening. Share this episode with a friend who loves a good ghost story. Subscribe so you never miss an investigation. And head over to our Facebook page, the Dark Folio Podcast, where we share bonus content, listener stories, and behind-the-scenes research. Your support helps keep these stories alive. Now, let's head to the basement. The basement and the lounge are where staff report the most unsettling experiences and where the unease settles deepest. Employees describe hearing what sounds like children laughing, running footsteps, and voices echoing through empty corridors. But records show no children lived or worked there. Some staff have even reported hearing what they describe as the unmistakable sound of an infant crying from the basement depths. Maintenance and laundry personnel have fled the lower floors in panic, searching for the source and finding nothing. Why children? Well, some paranormal researchers believe residual energy can replay emotional moments, joy, fear, play, especially in places where times seem layered. Others suggest the sounds are misinterpreted echoes, amplified by the hotel's unusual acoustics. But there's also another theory. Remember those underground tunnels? The ones filled with opium dens, distilleries, and gambling halls? Perhaps the echoes aren't coming from upstairs at all. Maybe they're coming from below, from a world that existed in secret, a world where anything could have happened and no one would have known. And then there's the documented story of the man at the bar. In 1970, 3 men robbed a Flagstaff bank. During their escape, one of them was shot by a guard. Bleeding and in shock, they made it back to the Hotel Monte Vista. They booked a room, and then they went to celebrate at the Monte Vista Lounge. The wounded man sat down at the bar, but before he could even take a sip of his drink, he bled to death, right there at the bar. Today, according to staff accounts and guest reports, people describe seeing a half-bodied apparition standing at that same bar. Some staff say he greets the bar managers when they open in the morning. Other guests report an intense sensation of being watched while they drink. Bar stools are said to move on their own. Drinks shift across the bar, and some patrons report hearing a voice say simply, "Good morning." Is it the bank robber? Or is it one of the many other outlaws, drifters, and gunfighters who met their end in barroom brawls at the Monte Vista over the decades? The hotel staff have learned to live with him, and they consider it kind of a running gag. During Prohibition, Flagstaff's red light district operated just south of the railroad tracks, only 2 blocks from the Monte Vista. According to local legend, in the early 1940s, a man staying in room 306 brought 2 women from that district back to his room. And the story goes that before the night was over, both women were murdered, and their bodies were thrown out of the 3rd floor window to the cold street below. While documented records of this specific incident are elusive, the tale has been passed down through hotel staff and local historians for decades. What happened in that room, whether legend or truth, speaks to betrayal, desperation, violence, and fear. Emotions that don't fade easily. Today, guests in room 306 report lights turning on and off, cold spots, and an overwhelming feeling of being watched. But it's the male guests who describe the most disturbing experiences. Some report vivid nightmares of being strangled. Others wake with feeling as if hands were covering their mouths or pressing on their throats. The spirits in room 306, according to those who've experienced them, apparently have not forgiven, and they have not forgotten. Even Hollywood brushed against Monte Vista's darker side. The hotel still names rooms after the celebrities who stayed there: John Wayne, Gary Cooper, Humphrey Bogart. But according to guest accounts, some report hearing what sounds like phantom parties late at night. Music playing when no one is there, laughter echoing down empty hallways, as if the hotel remembers when it was full of glamour, and it keeps replaying those nights. A building remembering its best moments and unable to let them go. The Hotel Monte Vista isn't abandoned, it is alive. People are still sleeping, laughing, arguing, and passing through. That constant energy may feed what's already there, reinforcing impressions instead of letting them fade. The hotel is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. You can book a room. You can sit at the bar where the bank robber died. You can walk the 3rd floor where the phantom bellboy makes his rounds. You can request room 305 and see if the woman in the rocking chair is waiting. The hotel is located at 100 North San Francisco Street in downtown Flagstaff, right off Route 66. Rooms are individually decorated to maintain the historic feel, while offering modern amenities like free Wi-Fi, cable TV, and coffee at the front desk each morning. But beware, not of the ghosts, of the noise. Seriously, the hotel sits above the Rendezvous Bar and the Monte Vista Lounge, both of which stay open till 2 a.m. If you book a room on the 2nd floor, you'll hear that nightlife below. The 3rd floor is quieter, but that's also where most of the paranormal activity is reported. The hotel welcomes curiosity about its ghosts. Staff, especially the housekeeping, has some of the most intriguing tales. And I hear that if you ask, they'll tell you. If you're brave enough, you can experience it yourself. The hotel has been featured on shows like Ghost Adventurers, Portals to Hell, and Paranormal Witness. It's listed on the U.S. National Register of Historic Places, and it remains the centerpiece of historic downtown Flagstaff. In places like this, the past doesn't rest, it waits. So, if you ever find yourself in Flagstaff and the Hotel Monte Vista has a vacancy, just remember, you may not be the only guest in your room. The woman by the window might still be waiting. The phantom bellboy might knock on your door, and the voices you hear in the basement might not be echoes at all. Sweet dreams, my kindred spirits, and I'll see you in the dark.